She's an MA gold medalist in social work and has worked in various capacities and has been associated with organizations like UNICEF, UNAID, Government of India, as a member of the national group of Mahila Samakya program. She has been also associated with advisory roles with the International Council of Women and many such organizations. She's going to today talk to us and give us a peek into the world of non-profit. She's going to introduce us, give a perspective to the concept of giving from a beneficiary angle. Please join me in welcoming Vandana Mahajan.
Good evening, friends. I was, after Justice Hegde's outpouring, I am finding it very difficult to lift my spirits. And the kind of a prepared script I have comes from a very, very optimist and a kind of pragmatic, optimist and yet a very pragmatic outlook, because I am a practitioner. So, let me try sort of, bring in the more okay, let me try, get my hands, dig my feet in and see what happens. So with that kind of a spirit, I'm trying to sort of, block the, but a very, very powerful kind of a presentation which Justice Hegde has done. Still, I think there is the positivist in me, the constructivist in me, and the practitioner in me, which asks me to go on. So I would like to begin with a quote that I have chosen for its core of simplicity to put us all here, present here in a reflective space. It's a quote by Rebecca Erwin. She is the head of the philanthropy of the Rolex watches. And when I read about the philanthropic work being done by Rolex, I realized that Rolex has been doing amazingly interesting work in the area of for the last 40 years. So the quote goes as that you could decide if you want to do well or you want to do good. There is a distinction. Everybody wants to do well, but are they doing good as well? This thought leads me to another leading question which has been asked perennially and still continues to be very hotly contested, which is, can there be growth without equality? And in this context, there is nowadays economists are sort of taking it as a Bible, the Thomas Piketty book on capital in the 21st century. So Thomas Piketty has, vis-a-vis this question of can there be growth without equality, in his latest work, he has very powerfully kind of, after making the analysis and critique of the neoclassical economics of growth as an end in itself and the flaws of the long-held view of the trickle-down benefits, Piketty has called for building an economic agenda which promotes broader development through social intervention to eradicate inequality and social disparity. And coming back to I also feel that India, our development sector has evolved quite substantially over the last few decades and is now witnessing unprecedented interest and investments across the value chain. So if we see the kind of policy, economic and social policy initiatives in our country, they have been guided, even if it is in theory, they have been guided by a strong perspective to address the concerns of the disadvantaged and marginalized. These policy perspectives and formulations have a multidimensional view of poverty, growth and development. And the focus has been on our fundamental rights and the need to expand opportunities while ensuring its equal distribution for human well-being and development. Given this scenario, however, we can't retract or ignore the bigger societal picture of which Justice Hegde made a very, very powerful kind of a visual, almost a visual picture of this extremely uneven and unequal distribution of the benefits of growth and the growing disparity in our society, which many believe, people like me also included in it, is the root cause of social unrest. Companies too have been the target of those perturbed by this uneven development, and as a result, their contributions to society are under severe scrutiny. With increasing awareness of this gap between the haves and the have-nots, this scrutiny will only increase over time and societal expectations will be on the rise. Many companies have been quick to sense this development and have responded proactively, while others have done so only when pushed to the wall. So these laws, the latest CSR mandate under the Companies Act is one such pushing and prodding. So governments as well as regulators, they have responded to this unrest and they have been, just to sort of, in our gathering, context of this gathering, I quote these two major policy which you all are familiar with, formulations which the government has brought out, which is one is the National Voluntary Guidelines for Social, Environmental and Economic Responsibilities of the Business, or the NVGs, which was brought out by Ministry of Corporate Affairs in 2011. And as part of this, the guidelines, it was mandated by SEBI to produce business responsibility reports for the top 100 companies. And the other one, of course, is the 2013 CSR clause included in the Companies Act. So in the inclusion of the CSR mandate to the dashboard of the boards of the Indian companies under the Companies Act is an attempt to supplement the government efforts of equitably delivering the benefits of growth and to engage the corporate world with the country's development agenda, which is looking at organizational success on social, ecological and economic fronts all at once. And the triple bottom line also addresses the three key concerns of planet, people and profit. So the Indian industry has responded positively to these reform measures with a wide interest across the public and private sector, Indian and multinational companies. And we also know that, that philanthropy and the kind of social responsibility is not new to Indian companies. There has been a tradition of philanthropy deeply rooted in some of the the most recognized business houses we know in India for the last more than 50 years. However, despite this kind of the willingness and the understanding of looking at the simultaneously the sociological, the ecological and the economic agenda, there is still a lot of ground to cover as confusions and contradictions galore. Trust deficit needs to be bridged, and accountability mechanisms based on the core values and principles of moral duty and ethical practices still need to guide the CSR agenda. In this regard, if I may share another thought with you and ask you to reflect upon, which is what makes our CSR agenda different? Can we bring in the same seriousness, prestige and pursuit of excellence to realizing the goal of social change for equality, inclusion and fairness that we give to achieving the goals of economic development, profit maximization, and growth through our businesses. I would like to spend now the remaining few minutes that I have to bring in especially the voices and experiences from the space of civil society and development sector. And these kind of reflections are on what could be the scope, nature and quality of engagement of the civil society organizations with the corporate and business sector, and what are the associated challenges and opportunities in doing so. In this regard, I again would like to quote from a sociology professor from the University of Brunswick, USA, Nancy Nason Clark. Quote begins with, "When our passion is rooted in the voices and experiences of others, it becomes quite powerful. A powerful inspiration to be the change." The last segment is added and adapted by yours truly. As CSR in our country is still very much in the making, quote unquote, very much in the making, therefore it is the most opportune time for both the sides, the civil and development sector organizations and the business sector institutions, to engage with each other. The role of civil society in fueling this change is bound to be extremely important. With the new corporate resources within their reach, much will depend upon the ability of the civil society organizations to innovate, to adapt, to engage. If increased spending under the CSR is to achieve results as is mandated under the Act, then it needs to be done systematically and thoughtfully. It is therefore the right time for corporates and business houses to invest in developing concrete strategy and guiding frameworks to identify areas of working together with the civil society, of forming non-traditional partnerships, and develop models and tools of the why, how and what of responding to emerging sectors requiring major transformation. And I am referring to the social sectors here. So some of the key social concerns and developmental areas to look through the CSR agenda could be from the civil society angle. These are youth leadership, skill building and entrepreneurial development, women and children's empowerment, urban safety, human and social security, peace building and conflict resolution, social and economic entitlements of the poor and deprived, access of masses to the digital connectivity, distress migration, rural livelihood, ecological nurturance and green wisdom. The list by no means is exhaustive. It's the kind of areas which have repeatedly now in the last 5-10 years of my engagement in the with the civil society and largely from the women's movement and women's organizations perspective, these are the concerns which I have sort of culled together, and also working with the youth groups and youth mobilization programs. These are the concerns which I felt were very current and very hotly kind of looked at when the civil society is looking at engaging with the corporates. So let's think outside the hat. Think of taking the non-trodden route, of coming out of our comfort zones. Think if the women's human rights and children with their individual identity and rights are put on the CSR agenda. Because I know that these are the issues which are still not in the realm of what we are looking for corporations to add to their social responsibility, to look at it from the rights perspective and not as a benefactor, as a beneficiary and a service provider, as a client. So here I am asking for these children and women not to be seen as passive recipients of our welfare and charity fees. Think if our business interests could be responsive to the diversity of issues of reaching out to people with different abilities, needs, their atypical life choices and orientations, and thereby facing severe stigma and deprivation because of the life choices they have made. Think if our businesses could put inclusion as central to their economic and development agenda, thereby enhancing the agency of the millions of the vulnerable sections of our society who have been left out of on the margins of our and global growth story. If I may ask, can we and how do we prepare ourselves to be comfortable to work with the community-based and people's organizations? Because I think that's an area of, of feeling confident, of being willing, of being, looking at the community-based people's organizations from a lens of not just receivers and providers, but as so that's where I am coming from. That I also in this space of looking how do we prepare ourselves to engage with people's organizations, to include in this space the women's groups, the special interest groups, the ecological agencies, the groups, institutions promoting social and cultural rights, social entrepreneurs, and organizations which are research, knowledge and advocacy based, and other non-traditional developmental sector stakeholders. So, I'm just trying to very kind of, it may seem little abrupt, but I wanted to fill in with the kind of the constituencies and the areas of concerns from the civil society space. So bear with me if you find that, there is, if it is little abrupt. The CSR mandate under the Companies Act, I believe presents a unique opportunity to make a paradigm shift towards structured engagement in the civil society space for bringing transformational change. A shift from looking at shareholders to stakeholders as mentioned above. For developing a robust CSR strategy or CSR programs would need to build on the foundation of an organization that is socially sensitive and responsible. And in my understanding, this would require all of us to be led by our heart, guiding the mind, and the mindfulness leading to action for change for the betterment and well-being of all. It's time to leapfrog, to reinvent and reinvest for being socially innovative and morally responsive. And what are the kind of challenges if we want to leapfrog? I thought that, the first challenge is looking at the way government treats this whole agenda of CSR, of pushing the agenda for the CSR. So, I completely agree with Justice Hegde because we also see that governments have stopped short at legislating or making policy proclamations. And it is taking an increasingly easier route of either doling out services and goodies in a benefactor mode for appeasement, or simply walking away, shying away from its responsibility and accountability as the primary duty bearer to secure the rights of the citizens under our country's constitution. So now, and if we are to look at the challenges from the side of the corporates and businesses, the key kind of challenges are around the issues of corporations working mode being very, very opaque and without transparency or information sharing. So the inclination to report and disclosure under the new National Voluntary Guidelines, from my understanding, is a positive development. And the other challenge is that most of these activities supported under philanthropy are cast in a kind of a very set, traditional, stereotypical mold with little creativity or innovation. So what you have is mainly, donations, and grant making is still a very evolving, a nascent way of coming forward with our understanding of the CSR. And these, so usually the chosen areas of intervention are related with education and health, with mostly underprivileged children and women. And there are very few models to assess the impact of the CSR work. And the aims of the programs under the CSR are fairly broad, something like to eradicate illiteracy. So, it could be as broad as or to service the humankind, and which are tough to qualify. In giving grants or offering support to NGOs, most companies do not follow an open process of inviting applications and evaluating proposals. Instead, they make allocations on their own judgment and recommendations. And there is a traditional deficit of trust between profit-driven companies and socially motivated NGOs. As a result, companies like to work with NGOs they know and understand, leaving out large number of genuinely committed NGOs and creating more distance between themselves. And it is challenging for the companies to resist from thinking from a narrow view of achieving short-term goals and not get caught by the anxiety of seeing immediate results and do a cost-benefit analysis of the social investments made by them. To provide support for a long-term vision and approach for creating impact of social change in the communities requires openness and perseverance. To support qualitative interventions, it requires sensitivity to serve with an empowering approach towards the community and not view them as passive recipients or beneficiaries. It requires keeping an ear to the ground to learn and understand the causes, concerns and contexts of these communities. It requires engaging with stakeholders as equal partners while linking with state mechanisms to actualize their rights and entitlements. This is an approach which is still new and evolving as a work culture, and its ethics still being refined and is to be seen very much as work in progress. I come back once again to quote Rebecca Irvin. Remember, I began with her quote in the beginning. Quote begins with, "It is hard to do things right. It is not just a question of how much money you give. It is also that you give the right people the right amount of support at the right time. And it is very difficult to give away money well." Rebecca Irvin is currently, leading this Rolex Laureates for Enterprise, which is looking at supporting innovative people with interesting innovations. And they have set up a very, very unique art support program which brings together the art community for coming for the social concerns. So very interesting CSR example. So summing up the takeaways from the above said challenges while defining the CSR agenda is to avoid looking at short-term gains and look at the long-term impact, bringing focus on the qualitative improvement in the well-being with whom the corporates are going to be engaged, and to deliver on the promise of implementation, to work with humility and openness with the communities on the ground and not be led too much by centrally controlled processes. And from these challenges, we also see the opportunities. In South Asia, corporate responsibility is becoming a prerequisite for sourcing goods and services. GAP, for example, inspects every factory in its supply chain for speed, innovation, cost, and social responsibility standards, and rejecting about 15% every year. Nike has also positioned itself as another socially conscious brand, and the list is quite impressive. I've just given the two examples here. So it has become clear that some sort of CSR policies are necessary to give companies a competitive edge in global business arena. Another trend is the emergence of institutes and NGOs that work specifically on raising the awareness of CSR through workshops and conferences and consulting services that advise firms on CSR. Vardhan is, a new entrant in this arena itself of consulting service on CSR. A whole new generation of industrialists is now more amenable to working with NGOs, and business schools are teaching CSR more seriously. New and attractive models of firm-NGO partnerships are emerging. So there is an environment of innovative ideas, and platform for these have increased. So the latest, if you have followed on the NDTV India, there is with Hitachi, they have had this series of consultations called social CSR to social innovation, leap into the future. So, and there they had about 40 one of the most prominent industrialists coming and speaking about the agenda of social innovation. So the companies are moving beyond, looking at moving beyond corporate social responsibility to social innovation. There is a danger involved in it as well, but won't go into that at the moment. But we'll celebrate the spirit of looking at social responsibility from the newer angles, newer areas of engagement. So there is an example of Mahindra's Spark the Rise that pledges about 4 crores of Indian rupees as seed capital to nearly 50 socially relevant innovative ideas. And we have now huge number of examples, individual examples of organizations which are supporting the innovative, socially innovative ideas. So this whole term, which is now in currency, is the socialpreneur, and which now the social change, the social startups, the social enterprise startups is gaining a lot of popularity because there is a support coming from the corporates. And in that space, there is also the traditional directly operating their own charities or through their own non-profit foundations, trust and company setups, or supporting independently registered non-profit organizations that have a record of at least 3 years in similar such related activities. And the final way of engaging is collaborating or pooling the resources with other companies. CII and FICCI have provided for such pooling platforms. I had a list of some of these based on whether it is the direct approach of starting running your own charity or through your own some of the prominent examples, but I think I'll skip it looking at the time. But in terms of one example which I think since we are in this city, the example which I definitely would like to not miss is the Azim Premji Foundation. Mr. Azim Premji has pledged, as you know, $4 billion to the Azim Premji Foundation for a kind of a long-term overhaul of the education system in India. So it's a kind of a path breaking and gesture innovation by amongst the industrialists based in Bangalore that we can draw a lot from, and there is a lot of interesting initiatives which one can look at happening under the foundation. I would like to now just sort of close by this quote of Alfred Tennyson. As we prepare to exit from the year 2014 and enter 2015, I wish for us that, quote, hope smiles from the threshold of the years to come, whispering it will be happier. Thank you and wish for peace, equanimity and justice to prevail for all.